Goal serves you, not the other way around. So if you set a goal, the primary purpose is to organize your behavior towards something instead of wander. We don't set a goal. We have lots of different things people pull at our attention. There's all kinds of shiny objects that cause us to kind of wander in circles. And the goal, I think of it as a beacon. Many of the distractions we deal with are engineered purposely. Social engineers and coding engineers who figured out, like, how do you keep somebody on this platform, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, for as long as possible so we can extract maximum ad value. We live in a time where we have more choices than any of our ancestors. You tend to focus too much on what other people are thinking about you. And when you shift instead to thinking like, well, what do other people need? What are their goals? It changes internally your experience of life. If you think about our minds, we have so many thoughts, memories, ideas in our head that we can't hold it all consciously. As you know, in our conscious thoughts, most of it exists more at the subconscious level until we pay attention to it. And so some people have used this analogy of thinking of our attention as like a flashlight, shining it into a dark closet that represents all the hundreds and thousands of things in our mind. But the beam of that flashlight lights up only certain things in the dark closet at a time. And whatever you focus it on has a profound impact on how you experience what feels like reality to you at that given moment. And so if you shift your attention from yourself and you shine that flashlight on, I wonder what the goals, fears, needs, purposes of the other people are in your life, then it reduces that self-consciousness and it starts to create this positive sort of rolling snowball effect where you become more and more interested in the other person genuinely. It's not an act. It's like starts to gradually become who you are and how you interact with the world in such a way that your self-consciousness goes down and the interest that people experience when you're interacting with them goes up. And so, just thinking from that perspective, I think the identity shift, that was probably a part of that shift towards thinking, I'd rather be useful to others instead of cool and admired by others. So that was a big part of it. And as you can imagine, going through all of the training involved in becoming a licensed psychologist, it's a very rigorous process. And through that, I shifted from being somebody who's trying to understand and learn, like, what do people know that I don't understand here, dropped into this different environment, to listening to stories and hearing the inside thoughts of hundreds of people from all different walks of life and with different belief systems and different concepts of what their goals are or should be. And you naturally, as a therapist, you start to empathize with the story and the world that person lives in their own mind as you try to meet them there in that personal reality that they've created. And so that expanded my identity to being one of a person who feels like, I think I understand quite a lot about people in this world. And it shifted my identity towards feeling more like, I think I have some useful answers for people. And that encourages you then, to adopt more of the identity of, well, I'm going to show some people some of the new things that I've discovered that allow me to be useful to them. So that would be, I guess, the answer that comes to my mind.
Oh, that's perfect. One of the things, and I want to jump into goals in a little bit, but you're not going to believe, so this week I've probably done, I don't know, 4 or 5 podcasts, and we've all come down to try to answer this question that you are perfectly and uniquely suited to answer because you're part of both worlds. And the folks that we've gone back and forth, there was a therapist that was on one show, and then there was a coach on another show that we would talk about, and we've been talking about coaching versus therapy and the need for each of them. And I'm a 100% believer where there's times that you need therapy, but the question everybody's been answering, if you have an incredible, great coach, do you actually need a therapist? And I say, well, yeah, because you have to get to maybe this equal level of something so that you can accept what a coach would give you. But we were just kind of talking about the coaches focusing on your future compared to therapists, focusing on the past and trying to mend and fix and help with the past. And how do those meet? And not that one's better than the other, but that, like, when people are trying to move forward, the coaching seems to be a person that might be able to get you to where you're trying to go, but without the therapist before. So I just want to hear kind of your thought process, because your brain is split in two because you're both.
Yeah.
And so, you're the one with the absolute right answer, because we're just making up because we don't know on the other side of it.
Well, I hope you don't hate my answer, but I would say there is no one size fits all answer.
Okay, of course.
That's my opinion, because it really, you've got to ask, well, who are we talking about? What problems do they have, and what goals do they have, and who is the best person that's has the right skills or knowledge or background to help them most with that? And it could be both. It could be, in this case, for this person, for these goals, for this background, that person needs both a therapist and a coach for this specific thing. Or it could be one or the other, or in sequence. But certainly, there's I would say it's a fairly commonly used concept that therapy is about the past and coaching is about the future, but that's not really true.
Okay.
If you study clinical psychology, you learn pretty quickly that there's probably the majority at this point of psychotherapeutic methodologies are about what's happening now and how can we help you build the future you want by restructuring that internal world. And there's cognitive behavioral therapy and solution focused therapies and all of these different aspects to that. I think that emerged from a kind of a discomfort people had in the coaching world at first. They're entering in and doing something that felt somewhat like therapy, but not being licensed to do it.
I do want to jump into, when you were talking about your story and the goals and the things that you talk about. One of my thought processes on goals is that, and I'd love to hear how you tackle this, is I've kind of almost come full circle with, the SMART goals, or the goals that have to have a date, and then you win the date, because with my faith in the things that I believe, I don't know if I can control a date. I can control the activity, and I think it's important to have activities and things you do. But as soon as I put a date with that, I almost kind of start thinking, well, all right, God, you this is what I want, and I want it to happen on this day. Make it happen on that day for me, because I can't control that, but I can control the activity. And so I try to make my goals. There's things that I believe I want to have that are within that His will or the purpose, but at the same time, I go, if I put a date on it, maybe help me through your goal setting practice.
I love that question. Yeah, that's something I think a lot of people wrestle with, and including myself. I've wrestled with that question a lot for myself and with my clients. And I've even had clients say, in response to my prompts to, hey, let's set some goals for this year, this quarter, or something, like, I don't really like setting goals because sometimes it makes me feel bad if I don't achieve them. And so we start by remembering, like, the goal serves you, not the other way around. So if you set a goal, it's really the primary purpose is to organize your behavior towards something instead of wandering. Okay. So if we don't set a goal, we have lots of different things people pull at our attention. There's all kinds of shiny objects that cause us to kind of wander in circles. And the goal, I think of it as a beacon. It's like a lighthouse showing you, like, where am I trying to get again? And so if you adopt that perspective, then it doesn't really matter if you set what I call a lag indicator, a lagging indicator of whether you're achieving what you need to achieve. So if I said, my goal is to run a mile in 4 minutes, or to earn $100,000 in the business this month, then that's just a beacon, and that we work backwards from there to set the leading indicators of, okay, well, what are the things we actually have control over that will lead to that outcome? And that's where we really focus our attention on a day-to-day basis. We want both. We want a combination of lagging indicators, the things that we actually care about that we can't control directly, and then the leading indicators that we can check off, did I do those things or not? And that helps us to essentially have a feedback loop that shows us, am I wandering off course, or am I doing the things that I need to? And then if you release that need for, somehow if you didn't achieve the goal that you failed, then it's a very useful thing. And, there's plenty of research that shows that if we set goals that we're going to make more progress.
Actually move up.
Right.
So, but what then happens is there's these things that are called distractions, or things that jump in our way. And so I would love to kind of hear your thoughts, because we live in this world now where there's a dangling carrot every few seconds in our lives, just because we're so bombarded with not only information, but entertainment and, all these things. How are you helping people I guess, take away some of those distractions that would stop them from achieving.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to start with a concept that I learned from Dan Nicholson, the top 50 CPA company owner. He calls it the solvable problem. And you want to start with having a solvable problem, which is just a way of saying, like, what actually matters to you personally? What is your definition of success, which, is going to change based on whatever time frame we're talking about. So if you start there, it's so much easier to solve an equation where there's something specific on the other side of the equal sign compared to if it's just variables on the left and variables on the right, and you're not quite sure what are we actually trying to solve for. It's much, much easier to solve for something once you define what it is. And that helps to reduce distractions. There's also just the frequent feedback cycle of which you have a vision and you set a goal for how you're going to achieve that, and then you work backwards, like you said, the reverse engineering process that should have a frequent enough check-in that it works for you personally. And for some of my clients, that means it needs to be throughout the day, because they know that, for example, some of the guys I work with, even though they're very successful in business, have ADHD, neurological tendencies that cause them to be more vulnerable to going off track, even just within the day. Like they might have reviewed their goals in the morning and what the leading indicators they should be working on today are, but 2 hours later, because of an email that came in, they're like researching some other business model or something they know they shouldn't be doing if they want to make any meaningful progress. The distraction that we deal with so often in this world that just seems to, I'm sure you and your listeners all know that many of the distractions we deal with are engineered purposely by, the social engineers and coding engineers who figured out, like, how do you keep somebody on this platform of Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, for as long as possible, so we can extract maximum ad value from these users. And so we're bombarded with that, and we live in a time where we have more choices than any of our ancestors have had. It used to be that if you grew up in a carpenter family or blacksmith family, that there was kind of only very few options. You just do what you were, this is the one option is my dad can teach me how to do blacksmithing, so that's what I'm going to do. We live in this environment now where we can go online and learn about businesses that we'd never heard of last week, and we can be pursuing them by this afternoon. And so we do need more of those guardrails to channel us towards, that solvable problem, that thing that you've decided, like, this is what I want. So that's why I say, start with getting clear about what you want, separate it from what society is telling you that you should want, because we don't all want the same thing. And sometimes we, accidentally absorb the idea that we want something other people want and need to escape from things other people are trying to escape from. So, but it's interesting. I think you were touching on something that many people in the productivity world talk about a lot, which is your calendar. Does it actually reflect what you say you value? So if you say you value time with your kids, show me on your calendar where have you time boxed some space for that. If you value fitness, like, is that, why are you working till 8 p.m. and then hopefully trying to find time to work out once a week? Like that's, and so of course there's some productivity systems that actually take that. There's some software systems that have specifically been designed, like AkiFlow or Sunsama are two examples where you dump your tasks over in the left column and then you drag them onto a calendar that's synced with your Gmail on the right, and you estimate the time of each task, whether it's a 20-minute recurring admin task you have to do every week or every day at 7 a.m. on Tuesdays, or if it's a one-off task that's, a progress task towards a needle-moving future objective. So you're dragging those over to your calendar, and then what people's experience is oops, it doesn't all fit. And that's where the value comes in. At first, people say, like, this system doesn't work. This is frustrating. I can't fit it all in, until they realize, wait, that was the point, is that you see that it's not going to all fit. And so that forces you then to prioritize. And so then you have to ask yourself, well, what do I actually care about most? So then as a result, you schedule the things on your calendar. You end up doing more of the things. A higher percentage of your time is spent on the things that you actually meant to do, instead of the nonsense things that you probably could have skipped and gotten away with not doing. And that's yet again another specific solution to the distraction problem that we all face.
So I hear you. I mean, you're using names like Brian Tracy and Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and all these folks that highlight personal development and working on ourselves. One of the things that I try to do is help people become the person that God put them on this earth to do, so they can go out and do why they're here. But that takes working on ourselves. It takes the time in your mind or in your research and things you've done, and probably even with your coaching with goals. How much of a person's time, and I know one size doesn't fit all, but like a general, we got to spend some amount of time on working on us too, so we can become better. What does that look like for a person who's achieving some of the successes that they desire?
So you're saying, where does personal development fit into,
and how much needs to be there?
And you're right. Like, as soon as I start trying to think, well, what would be my answer to that question, I start thinking, okay, for this person it's this, for this person it's something else. One of my goals for the entrepreneurs I work with is, if you haven't achieved this, to first create your forever runway is the phrase I've given for that, which just means you've saved up enough into passive income sources that are not correlated with your own business that you're operating, such that you have a infinite runway of, exploring new business models, trying to build something from scratch that brings value and benefit to the world profitably. And that way you have time on your side, right? Because then it's not, well, this business model better work within 2 months or else we're out of cash and we have to stop because I need something to pay me for the grocery bill. So if that person, that's kind of a starting point, but eventually I've tried to get guys to the point where their business is operating without them putting out the fires and being even anywhere necessary within the org chart for the primary revenue generating activities of the business. And if you can achieve that, well, that means you can spend a lot of your time on personal development, and that ends up, you start to see that sort of that phenomena where whoever has much ends up being able to double down and build even more, and the people that have less, it's like they have less available time to invest in those personal development. It seems a little unfair, but it is nonetheless a pattern that seems to show up in our world over and over. One of the kind of foundational elements of what I do is decision coaching. And people think like, what? I thought you said you were a productivity coach for entrepreneurs. Yes. How do you think we achieve productivity? It's through decisions. We're always making bets. We're always placing a bet on how to invest our time, energy, resources, our team's energy, our financial resources. And, it's like some people say, if you're saying yes to this, it means you're saying no to something else. So we want to make those strategic bets, and we want to make sure that we're stacking the odds in your favor so that you can actually achieve the things that matter to you most. And so when we try to stack the odds in your favor, one of the things that we want to do is ensure that we are doing really good mental simulations of the future. This is our core superpower as humans. This is what separates us from the animal kingdom. People talk, well, it's language, or we have thumbs, or we use tools, but really I would argue it's more our capacity to simulate a future that hasn't happened yet, even distant in the future. That's also why we get ulcers. Like, somebody wrote a book, why zebras don't get ulcers. And it's like they run from the lion, and then they, 3 minutes after the danger's passed, they're back to just grazing, and their heart rate goes back down. Versus us humans, we spend the next 3 months worrying about when is the lion going to come back. It can be a curse, but it is also our superpower that we're able to look into the future. And so as I encourage people to think about decisions, we try to enrich their mental map of the future. That is the essence of what it means to boost your intelligence. Whatever level of neurological underlying intelligence God gifted you with, you can boost that by increasing and practicing the art of mentally simulating with more detail than we typically do when we're just kind of thinking while we take a walk and chatting with friends. We can boost that with certain prompts, and that's what I like to help people to do. It's not rocket science, but with some scaffolding, you can do better than without. So if you're at home and you don't have the resources for a coach, I would say start by thinking on paper. Look into, like, right, 3 years from now, 3 months from now, 3 weeks from now, 3 days from now, and then do a time box for each of those and say, if I was really serious about going for some goals or achieving something in my life or being useful to people in a certain way by 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks from now, what would my schedule need to look like? You start to fill that in, and it prevents your mind from wandering because you're thinking on paper. Like, okay, on Tuesdays I'd be doing this, and on Thursday evenings I'd be investing in this. And it helps us to generate a map for ourselves that leads us more in the right paths and less along the wandering paths.
Wow. This is so cool. What's your website so people, or how do they get a hold of you to help them with decision making, that kind of stuff? How do we do that?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. If you guys want to see some of the things that I talk about and think about, you can find me at toddsnydercoaching.com. It's spelled SNY. And, I have a YouTube channel. I occasionally put things out on the Far-Sighted Entrepreneur, but you can find links to that from my website. And, I'm not a person who spends much of my time generating content for social media, and I'm not on social media much. But if you wanted to connect with me, that's where you can find me.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'm going to ask you. So I think I talked at the beginning of the show. I'm launching a community on July 4th, which is called Becoming the Person Universe. And so I would love to have you as a guest in that community and be able to talk with people. We'll figure out how to make that all work. But this has been phenomenally fantastic. And I thank you for being on there. I've learned so much. I literally have 4 pages of notes of all the different things you're saying. I can't wait to go back and watch it again. If this is your first time on this show, we have many more shows like that, hit notifications and buttons to subscribe and all that kind of stuff, because you don't want to miss it. You're going to want to get into the community at some point, because we're going to have people just like Dr. Snyder on there that are talking about how to move your life in the way that you want to. You have this ability. I believe you're God's greatest gift. You can do this. You can make this happen. One last word, Dr. Snyder.
One last word. Is that an actual last word?
Yeah, maybe you get 10, I guess.
All right. Okay. So leverage that excess capacity you have for mentally simulating your future, so that you really go for what you want.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being on. This has been a pleasure. I can't wait to see you guys on the next one. Have an amazing, awesome, just awestruck day today. See you soon.